Good evening, everybody. My name is Todd Scholl. I am the lead learner at the South Carolina Education Association Center for Educator Wellness and Learning. We call ourselves COOL. You can go to cool.us to learn more about us. There's the website right there. It's cool.us, CEWL.us. You're going to be able to find all of the webinars that we do, all of the podcasts, blog posts, panel discussions. They're all laid out. And recently, we upgraded the website so that you can also find out about some of the professional learning opportunities that we at the SCEA provide free to South Carolina public schools. All you have to do is go to cool.us and learn more. So if your school or district needs some really good, relevant, engaging professional learning, head on over to cool.us. There's contact forms there. You can email me, toddscholl@gmail.com. and just request something that you see there, and we'll do our best to accommodate your needs. I am, of course, really thrilled that the SCEA has endorsed Lisa Ellis for South Carolina Superintendent of Education. As always, we encourage you to go over to our website at lisaforsc.com, check out what she stands for, make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure that your neighbors and your relatives and your coworkers and the cafeteria staff and the bus drivers and the custodial staff and everybody in your school, the substitute teachers, are all registered to vote and know the importance of this election and the importance of voting for Lisa Ellis for South Carolina Superintendent of Education. You can check out more information about voting in South Carolina at the scea.org/votes. And you can learn more about Lisa Ellis's campaign by texting the word Ellis to 48744. And before we jump into tonight's session, I want to make sure you look at the scroll along the bottom. We have a movement, and this movement is growing. We have seen in the past year unprecedented growth at the South Carolina Education Association, and we're so excited about it because the more we grow, the more power we have, the more collective power we have to create the kind of change that you deserve, that all educators and public education employees deserve, and all students deserve as well. If you're not currently a member, there's a couple of things I'd like you to consider tonight. Go on over to the scea.org/connect. That is a no obligation form. Just connect with us. We'll reach out to you. We'll give you some more information. We can talk to you about what membership is all about, what all the benefits are, why we need you in our movement, how you can become a leader in our movement. Just check that website out, the scea.org/connect. And if you're interested in joining, you can go to jointhescea.org right now or text the word join to 48744. We would love to have you in our movement. I'm so excited to be in the movement, and I'd be excited to have you in the movement as well. Well, let's turn our attention to tonight's session. I put out a call for some proposals, and one of the proposals I got back was tonight's session. It's called Mindshifting, Growth Mindset and Critical Thinking for Impactful Educators. And this is right up my alley. I'm so excited to learn from our presenter tonight. He co-founded Academic Business Advisors in 2005, which helps organizations develop business strategies to align their products and services with the ways purchasing decisions are made and technology is used in schools and districts so that they can scale and make a difference to kids and educators. In 2014, he co-founded EdChat Interactive with Tom Whitby and Steve Anderson. That's a service to share best practices among educators through live online interactive events, kind of like this. And in January of 2015, he co-founded the nonprofit Games for Ed with Larry Coco to facilitate collaborations between educators, researchers, game developers, publishers, and policymakers to further the use of games and other immersive strategies in schools. And I've seen how that can be incredibly effective. He served on the board of the EdTech Industry Network of the SIIA from 2012 to 2019. He was the co-chair from 2015 to 2016 and chair in 2019. He's currently the COO of 3D Bear Incorporated, the U.S. subsidiary of a Finnish EdTech AR and VR company. And you guys know how interested I am in AR and VR. But without further ado, let's bring in Mitch Weisburgh. Mitch, how are you doing tonight?
Great. Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty cool here. I'm up in New York, and my wife just told me it's going down to 40 degrees tonight.
Yeah, well, I'm currently in North Carolina, and it's supposed to go down to 46, and it's been in the upper 70s, 80s for a while. So I broke my sweater out.
Yeah.
starting to cool off here. And you and I talked a little bit before we came on, and you said maybe there's going to be a Subway Series this year between the Mets and the Yankees. Now, which are you, a Yankees or a Mets fan?
So I'm a long-suffering Mets and Jets fan.
Okay, yeah. So you have been suffering quite a
Right.
bit.
Yeah.
Prayers to you, my friend. Yeah, I've been a Yankees fan since I can remember. So I've been fortunate. They've had kind of a little bit of a dip lately, but
Right.
I feel like they've got a good chance this year.
Yeah, and I was saying I was at the game on Tuesday night where the Yankees, and I actually left after the eighth inning, but the Yankees were behind 9-5, and it's like, three up, three down in the eighth, and we've got an hour and a half to get back, and we leave, and then lo and behold, Judge hits his 60th home run,
Yeah.
and then three people get on base, and Stanton hits a walk-off grand slam.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's been an amazing year for Judge, and I'm hoping that he's going to break the steroid-free record this year.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything in your bio that you want to mention to everybody?
Well, so this is just something that's kind of interesting. Next week I'm going to be in Finland. Okay, and what I've done is, as I put together a 3-day program for educators, and there's no cost to attend, but you have to get to Finland. Okay, where we're going to finish elementary school on Tuesday morning, a Finnish high school Tuesday afternoon. We're meeting somebody from the Ministry of Education and the Department of Education for the city of Helsinki to talk about their philosophies on Wednesday morning. Wednesday afternoon, we're going to be comparing the Finnish system to the systems in the different countries from the educators who are going to be there. And then on Thursday, we're going to be going to a teacher training university in Finland, and then 2 vocational schools, because Finland has a very strong vocational program. So the idea is to kind of launch some ideas around the world to change education. There's only going to be 11 or 12 of us there, but because we want to really get the conversation going. So that's just another interesting thing that I'm really psyched about, and I'm very nervous because everybody who's going is going because I said it's going to be great, and if it's horrible, it's all on me.
Yeah. Well, I've heard so much, for a long time about the Finnish education system, and they seem to be getting so many things right. And I wish that we would have an open mind to what they're doing over there, because it sounds like they're not only doing things the right way, but that they're very successful in doing it.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. I mean, everything that they're the teachers are highly respected in Finland, and they're given the autonomy and the time to plan out what they want to teach with the other teachers in the school. And just as an example, in the primary grades, kids are in class for 45 minutes, and then all kids have to go outside for 15 minutes. One teacher each time is elected to watch over the kids, and all the other teachers get a break. And then after 15 minutes, the kids come in, and then they're ready to go again. It's just like, wow, it doesn't sound great.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've just heard so many good things, and that notion right there of educators being respected and revered in the culture. And here we've got the exact opposite thing happening, where we're seeing the demonization of educators around false narratives, and just complete disrespect to educators, and then we wonder why we're having a teacher recruitment and retention issue.
And we all get into education, not to make a lot of money, or we get into education because we all love seeing that look on a kid's face when they get something, right? And when the kids really are enjoying what they're learning, and that's what we all want.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm really excited about your topic tonight. You gave me a little preview prior to us kind of going live, and I'm really interested. So I'm going to let you just share your screen, and I'll pop in if I have some questions or comments, and we'll bring in if anybody's watching and has comments or questions along the way. All you have to do is type in the Facebook comments, and we can bring those in and allow Mitch to sort of see what you have, what questions you have, and what comments you have. So.
Right, and Todd, feel free to pop up. And ask the questions if I miss them, because I'm going to be concentrating on, what I'm saying.
Sure.
So let me go and share my screen, and hopefully you all see my screen there, right?
Yep.
So the topic of tonight is mind shifting and growth mindset, and I guess a question for you all to think about. Have you ever interacted with someone, or who hasn't actually, interacted with someone with whom you're having a really strong disagreement over something really important, like something like maybe climate change, it could be gun control, it could be abortion, it could be inflation, it could be the pandemic, it could be something personal. So you're having a really strong disagreement with somebody, and then as you're having the disagreement, did you ever think to yourself, what could be going on in their mind that has them believe in something that's so obviously wrong, right? And then you continue in the argument, and have you ever been able to convince them by arguing? Okay, by showing them data or showing them how they were wrong. Have you ever succeeded in convincing them?
No.
No, right?
No.
And do you understand that as you're having the argument, they're thinking the same things about you? So,
Yeah.
what if we learned to think about problems, to communicate, to collaborate in ways that propel us forward rather than drive us apart? And that's really what my journey has been. So my journey has been over 5 years, and it started with the realization that basically we're talking past each other, and that we're not actually making progress on most of the really important issues that are facing us, and that we're not really preparing our children to become functioning adults. And my goal is to give people, especially the next generation, the the skills to be able to think critically, to solve problems together, and reach solutions despite obstacles and overcoming opposition, so that they can lead successful lives, and we all can lead successful lives, and tackle the issues our generations have dumped on them. So that's really what spurred this journey. So it's been about 5.5 years at this point, and I've put all of this material into two courses. And the first one focuses on how our minds work, and that's actually I'm going to go through material for both of them tonight. But the first one focuses on how our minds work, and the second is on how we make sense of situations and prepare to succeed in the long term. These courses were designed for educators, both for our own understanding as educators of how to make sense of situations and develop habits of mind, and also how we then give our students these abilities to make sense of situations, think critically, communicate, develop healthy habits and actions. So each of these two courses is basically 80, 90-minute sessions. So it's a lot of material. Generally, I give them, it's twice a week, which is, 8 by 1.5 hours. That's 12 hours of class time. And then there's about 3 hours of coursework during the course. And most of the time that you're doing out of class work, it's in developing lessons, for your students. And if you sign up in the public course is $125. But I'm going to be talking to Todd, because I think that maybe we can work with SCEA and substantially reduce the course, or maybe do it for free for anybody from South Carolina.
Great.
So that $125 covers all 8 sessions. This URL takes you to this next course. It starts on November 1st. And then the second, there's a second course, which will probably start in mid-January. But that's kind of like, where I've been with this. One is, from the material in the course. Okay. So we start off, and this is really an oversimplified view of how the brain makes sense and makes decisions. And, there's like 100 billion neurons in different parts of the brain. But if we think about decision making and we break it into 3 parts, there's the heuristics part on the top left. Okay. And these are the things that we know how to do well, the things that we can do without thinking, rules that we've internalized. And then there's a judging part. Okay, which is the second part. And basically, our judging part of our mind is binary. It's either good or it's bad. It's painful or it's pleasurable, or it's painful or it's less painful, or it's something we want or something that we don't want. And then the third part is the conscious mind, and that's where we have we have access to reasoning, to resourcefulness, to critical thinking, and to creativity. These first parts, the first parts on the left, the heuristics and the emotional good or bad, get triggered in hundredths of a second, like two hundredths, 2.5, 300ths of a second. Whereas the conscious mind gets triggered in about 2 to 3 seconds when we approach a situation. So if you think about that, we're going through, we're saying, oh, we could possibly do this, and then no, we could possibly do this, no, we could possibly do this, yes. Those decisions are being made before the conscious mind is even activated. Once this decision has been made, the conscious mind, then the role of the conscious mind is then to justify that decision rather than to come up with alternatives. So we're really, not able to access the full resources of our conscious mind in most situations, because our lizard brains, if you will, because the parts on the left developed quicker, earlier in evolution than the conscious mind. So we're making we're using our conscious mind primarily to justify the decisions that we've already made. So if we look at what happens by default, there's some event, some decision, some conversation, something that happens, okay? And in 1/50th of a second, okay, the limbic parts of the brain, the older parts of the brain get, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. The emotional part is saying, yes, I will, yes, yes, I won't. Is this a threat? Is this not a threat? Once those decisions have made, that triggers, well, okay, let's say this could be a threat. Triggers fear, pain, and anxiety. Those then cause the brain to release cortisol and adrenaline. Cortisol and adrenaline shut off the prefrontal cortex. And so the actions that we generally chose, which by default are, flight, running away, fighting, freezing, or doing something the way we've always done, that's what gets decided on. And then the prefrontal cortex basically just comes up with a reason why that's right, and it rationales and justification. And that's really the default way that our minds operate, because our brains were created, first of all, for survival. Okay, so to recognize things that threaten us, and to be able to focus and quickly react to them. Second of all, to conserve energy, so to not have to think very hard. And third of all, to blend in, to do what everybody else is doing. So this is how our brains operate in default. And then when we're resourceful, our brains take a very different tact. Okay, when we're resourceful, some event comes, and we look at that event kind of as an opportunity. And here, we're saying, oh yeah, this could be fun. We could, what are the other things that we can do? And so the emotional good or bad says, well, something, let's check with the prefrontal cortex and let's see what it can come up with. And so let's encourage the prefrontal cortex, so it releases other hormones, serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins. Those amplify and engage the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex goes in and says, gee, how could I use this to connect with others? How do I explore and evaluate different courses of action? How do I innovate and come up with things with other people? How do I align this to my higher level goals? And how do I commit to some action and stick with it even when things go wrong? And then that comes up with the action. So this is really what we want to trigger. And this is what the default is. And really that first, say, half of that first course goes in, well, how do we recognize when we're in each phase? How do we switch from this phase where we're regarding things as threats to this phase where we're regarding things as opportunities? And then how do we get kids to also recognize what situation, how they're evaluating the situation, how they can evaluate it more effectively, and get kids to also get into this, playful curiosity exploration state of mind where they can really communicate, collaborate, and think critically. So that's really the first part of the course is recognizing it, the different things that we can do ourselves. How do we recognize the situations? And then how do we also train kids so that they're able to do this as well? So I'm going
Yeah,
to stop
that's
a second and
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and anybody who's watching, if you have questions or comments, please type them in the comments field on Facebook, and we'll bring them in. But I had so many thoughts when you were sharing this. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is mindfulness, and being able to really deconstruct a process of how do we develop and cultivate this capacity to do what you're saying here in the second part, which is to keep that prefrontal cortex online, even if you are maybe a little bit stressed out or something happens that would normally cause you stress, normally cause you to go into that sort of stress response where you're not in your right mind and you're making decisions based out of fear and anger. And it reminds me of Dan Siegel's work and the Whole Brain Child, I think that was what it's called, or the Whole Brain School, where you develop this stairway between the downstairs. He calls it the downstairs and the upstairs part of the brain. And I really like that. I like having metaphors for these sort of neuroscience concepts. I think it helps to have those kind of metaphors. And I think this is such a key component in terms of student behavior and even adult behavior in the school, and how we have cultivated capacity to emotionally regulate, stay calm in the face of what is can be a very stressful environment in schools.
Yeah, imagine talking to, having gone through some of the work with kids, your students, and a kid is acting up in class, they're angry, and you talk to the kid and say, okay, I can tell that you're really angry right now. What are the 3 ways that you know of that could get you into a more resourceful state of mind? And they have it because they've been through it. So you've anchored those 3 things. And when you hit on mindfulness, mindfulness is one of them. It allows us to calm the brain. I mean, so I'm just thinking, how many times do we do something and we get really, really upset because we messed up or somebody messed us up or something like that, and then 2 weeks later we think about the event and we're able to laugh about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, why should we have to wait 2 weeks to be able to laugh about it? What if we had the power it happens and what if we could turn it on in 3 minutes rather than 2 weeks? Wouldn't that make us a lot happier, a lot more fulfilled, give us, allow us to be a lot more resourceful? That's what we want to do for the kids.
100%. And I think it was Dr. Rick Hansen. He talked about the stages of how you can, sort of a rubric for how you can tell you're developing in, I think, this work. And he said, you start off and you're unconsciously incompetent. Then you're conscious of your incompetence. Then you are consciously competent,
right?
And then unconsciously competent. And so, like, I find myself when I get agitated and I get into that sort of stress response, and I'm not really accessing the prefrontal cortex, trying to wake up to the unconscious pattern of, that's sort of underlying whatever I'm thinking, whatever I'm feeling, so that I can kind of move up that rubric a little bit.
Yeah. So as you talk about those 4 different stages, think back to the things that in your life you've found absolutely the most challenging, the hardest things in your life to do, whether you've done them or not. And then think back to the things that you're proudest of that you've done. And my guess is all the things that you're proudest of that you've done are also related to many of the challenges that became really hard. And so what if you could switch from, when you're doing something that's really hard and causes you to be anxious and nervous, and maybe even angry, what if you could switch your mind frame to say, wow, this is a great learning opportunity for me. And so you welcome it.
Yeah.
Your whole attitude towards that changes. Well, that's for us. What if we could get kids to do that? Like,
Yes.
they're oh, I'm not good in math. And then, but what if we could get them to say, you know something? I'm not good in math, and that's a great challenge, and I'm going to get good in math. Okay, we see them do that with, say, video games or things that they like to do.
Yeah.
What if we could get them to do that with school?
Sure. Absolutely. We have someone watching. I think she's from Malaysia. She was on another session that we did. Her name, I think her name's
Oh, I know Kay.
You know, Kay?
I know
Okay.
Kay.
So
She's
she's
great.
asking, yeah, she's saying staying focused is a major issue, specifically or especially with so many distractions and things going on around her. What would you recommend for that?
So that's an interesting question, because it could be, staying focused for the kids or staying focused the question could be for us. I'm going to take it that the question is for the kids. And so, if I wish, in the next part, I'll kind of explain complex situations. And this that question yields you to a complex situation. But having said that, um, you know, there's mindfulness, but part of the course goes into our conscious minds can handle basically 5 thoughts. Okay. So, and that, whether it's us or whether it's students, there's, 5 ± 2. Okay. So one of the things, as a teacher, or, somebody working with kids, or somebody working with everybody, is to keep that in mind, that we can't teach something and then teach something and then teach something, and and students aren't just going to retain it. So there's a number of tricks that one could use to keep those 5 open. Now, if you have a child in a class and that child is hungry and is angry at a sibling or a parent, and has to go to the bathroom, okay, so that of those 5, those 3 are taken up, and so you only have 2 that you can even work with, unless you can meet the needs of those other 3. So the general technique is to be aware that we all have 5 ± 3, and if your students aren't, if their minds aren't taken up by some of these other things, which could be taking up space in their brain, is to use various techniques. One of which is to help kids internalize what you're teaching, so they don't have to regard it as consciously. When they're learning addition and they think, let's say 3 + 2, 1 2 3 + 1 2, okay, that's 5. And they have to really think about it. But if that's unconscious competence, that's, oh, 3 + 2, okay, that's 5. And so you do a word. So when you're trying to teach them word problems, they don't have to really use their conscious mind in order to think of some of the earlier skills. So you give kids the opportunities to become fluent in some of the earlier things, or to chunk them together into bigger concepts, so that they don't take up those 5 things. And so that would be a quick and dirty answer. I hope that helps.
Good.
So I kind of alluded to complex situations. So let me just go, that the question is like, well, what do you do with all the distractions that kids are facing? And very often when we're faced with problems or situations or opportunities, we go into one of these 3 different modes. Like, I know the one best solution. I know what it is. Okay. Or, gee, Mitch is an expert. Have him tell me the right answer. Or XYZ is an expert, or XYZ. This person is an authority, and they'll tell me what to do. Or, gee, I just have to get data. I'll analyze things, or I'll ask people, or I'll look it up, and I'll get information, and that's going to give me the right answer. And then once I know that right solution, now all I have to do is let everybody else know that they're wrong, and that because my solution is right, and that's kind of by default. What we go through in the course is, there really are situations where there is one right answer, okay, but there's many other types of situations where there's more than one right answer, or maybe there's no answer at all. And so, the next base, so this the course number 2, but we're using something. It was pulled together by a person named Dave Snowden, who's from Wales, and I challenge anybody to pronounce this. Okay, but it's the Cynefin framework. I never got, like it took me a year and a half to figure it, to learn how to pronounce it correctly. But it's a Welsh word, basically meaning home, or hearth. But and there's a lot of other material in this section of the course also, but it has us recognize 4 different types of situations. So there clearly are situations where there is one best answer. If I'm hungry, then get something to eat, okay? Or my car is out of gas, fill it with petrol or with gasoline, okay? So those I would call simple problems. But there's also a lot of situations where hey, it's not obvious, okay, that we have to analyze information, and or we have to find experts to help us with with that information. And usually in these types of situations, there's more than one right answer. So if you think about, say, designing an airplane or designing a school, okay, if you were designing a school and you got 5 different architects and you gave them and you told them what you needed, you get 5 different designs. Probably any one of them would work. And the interesting thing about another interesting thing about complicated problems is that it's much less important which of those solutions that could work that you choose. The thing that becomes the absolute critical thing is that everybody works together on the same solution. So just imagine a discussion and the differences in a discussion where everybody walks in thinking there's one right answer, and then I'm going to find it, or I have it, and now anything anybody else suggests that's different is wrong. Mine is the best, or this is the rule. Versus a discussion where people get together and say, something, there's probably 10 different things that could work. So let's just quickly get through the decision so that we can really work on how to make this work and we can work together. Completely different discussions, right?
Yes.
Okay. The third type is here on this top left called complex. And in complex situations, these are novel or new situations where nobody knows the answer. So take coronavirus. Okay, when it first came, nobody knew how it was going to evolve. Nobody knew how it spread. Nobody knew how to stop it. And in these complex situations, they're never really solved in advance. The way you get through complex situations is you're going to be trying different things one way or another, and hopefully you're using the information that you get from trying these different things in order to continuously improve. And so, a question is, well, A, how do you come up with these different things? And that's probably too long for tonight. But basically, you want to make sure that things you try aren't going to get you into a worse situation than you are now. Okay. But you want to try different things that are going to give you good information. And just so imagine what would have happened with coronavirus if we all were prepared that, hey, this is a complex situation. Nobody knows what to do. An expert is, doesn't know anymore, really. They have expertise in parts of this, but nobody knows, the full story. So the experts can recommend a couple things that we try, like wearing masks or maybe distancing. And we can try those, see what the results are. But we don't have this, we wouldn't have this demonization that in one sense in the US, the government says masks don't do anything, so don't wear a mask. And then 2 months later, masks are the number one thing that you should be doing to protect yourself. Wear a mask. It's like you lose your credibility. The government said, look, the data right now is showing that masks may not be the best thing. So, if you want to wear a mask, sure, but we're not sure that we don't see any evidence that it works. And then we now have the data to show that a mask works. And the same thing with vaccines. And now the government kind of is backed into a corner because they've come out and said all these things about vaccines, and they can't go back and say, well, we were we were wrong. Even, it works in these circumstances, but it doesn't work in these circumstances. They have to double down on what they've said. Um, so giving people the skills to recognize when there's a complex situation and when you have to be trying things rather than coming up with a solution. And the other, another interesting point about complex solutions is that experts are generally the worst people to be in charge. Um, there's a lot of the data shows that experts are people who know more and more about less and less. What we want with complex situations is people who are willing to try new things. And so you need experts in the process, but experts shouldn't be running the process because you have to come up with novel solutions. So that's the third type. And then the fourth type is when you're in real danger. And when you're in real danger, you don't have time to come up with a lot of different solutions. And then your number one priority has to be to get safe. Okay. There's a flood, or there's a fire in your house. You have to get out of the house, and you have to get your loved ones out of the house and your animals out of the house first before you think about, the house is burning down. I wonder how in my next house I could prevent it from having an electrical fire. No. Get out of the house first. Get yourself safe. Then you can worry about the next thing. And then, in the course, it's like, what types of people tend to stick with simple or complicated or complex or chaotic, even if the situation doesn't call for it. How do you recognize it? How do you back out when you're faced with a person who's telling you that there's one thing to do, or that you're in a chaotic situation and you have to do something? What are the types of things to do in complex situations? What do you do in complex situations where you can't afford to try different things? How do you simulate different situations? How do you go into brainstorming mode so that you're not at each other's throat, but you're supporting each other? These are the types of things. And then you see that thing called cliff there. Simple is these rules, and you think about bureaucracies. Bureaucracies want rules. Like, when this happens, this is what you do. Even if the situation changes, the bureaucracies generally don't change. And eventually what happens is the situation gets worse and worse until it becomes really threatening or chaotic. And you basically fall off the cliff from simple to chaotic. And then you can't get back to chaotic. Whereas you could go from a complicated situation where you need expertise till the best things to do become common knowledge, in which case it's a simple situation. Everybody kind of knows what to do next. But going from simple to chaotic, it's a long, hard climb back to actually get solutions for the long term.
Yeah, this I think the politics of the decisions that have to be made really complicates this from being a sort of an unbiased, sort of objective. Let's look at the data. Let's listen to the experts, but let's also be open to new ideas. And then, and what happens is it just, whether it's, no matter what the topic is, I don't want to dive into a topic right now, but whether it's math or whatever, it becomes politicized, and people will just go to their camps, and then the data, they'll just find the data that supports whatever their camp says, and ignore any emerging data that would suggest that maybe they need to modify their view a little bit.
Right. And it goes back to the mind, which is why one of the reasons why the mind was one of the first things, is because we all have these cognitive biases. And how do we recognize when we're in a cognitive bias, and how do we recognize when somebody else is in a cognitive bias? But just imagine if kids could naturally, or if we all could naturally kind of look at things and say, oh yeah, they're saying that to do this, but this isn't really a simple situation. It's a complicated situation.
Yeah.
And so we need some expertise, and it matters less which thing that we do, but then that we all get together, or it's complex. Most things with people are complex because you do something and it affects, to fix something in the system, but then it changes how people interact with the system, and that changes the system itself.
Sure.
So,
this reminds me a lot of Simon Sinek's work, where he talks about how human behavior is really driven by the limbic system. Yet a lot of us are trying to convince people through the prefrontal cortex, through this sort of logic-based, communication. But if you think about how people made decisions about masking or whatever. It's really about a feeling, and we have this tendency towards tribalism that I think fuels people's decision making based on feeling and emotion, rather than let me just take an honest look at where the data is now and make the decision there.
Right. And actually, so that kind of triggers the next part. I can, so I'm going to go on to the next part, and you can come back. We can come back to this also. Is that goes to like, how do we implement things? And, kind of by default, we think, okay, I got the solution. I'm going to do this. It's going to work, and the problem is going to get solved. Well, for any of the big things that we face as society, when does or even as people, when does the first thing we do ever solve the problem completely? Think of just even like a soccer game. Okay. The first time when you kick the ball and you don't score a goal immediately, does that mean your team lost? No, you're not expected to kick the ball and score the goal. It takes place over time. If the other team scores first, does that mean your team lost? No. I'd prefer my team scored the first goal, but but I still have a 45% chance of winning, even if the other team scores the first goal in say the first 20 minutes or so. So so the third part is dealing with, how do we prepare to iterate? And we're using something that was developed really in the Air Force called OODA loops, and very simplistically, and it maps what we all naturally do anyhow, is we're observing information, we're figuring out or orienting different, what we could do. We're deciding to do something, and then we're acting, but we're using it as a loop, because then we're observing what we did and how we did it, and then reorienting and deciding and acting again. And it was developed by an individual named John Boyd originally in the 1960s, and then he refined it. And this is an overly simplistic view of it, but here's the whole thing, and it really maps exactly what we do in our brains whenever we're effectively or ineffectively making decisions, and it also maps what we do in groups to effectively and ineffectively make decisions, and this. Going through this and understanding what each one of these arrows means and what each one of these items means that we are really prepared for when people oppose us. And a good part of this section deals with what you were talking about before, is that as people, we're reacting from our limbic parts of the brain, our limbic systems, and when we're reacting emotionally. So what are the tactics we can use, and how do we internalize those tactics so that we can access them really quickly in this orientation stage, of the different methods that we can use, so that when somebody disagrees with us, we can go into a frame where we're mutually problem solving rather than arguing. And we go through in the course about 4 different techniques for how to connect with people, and how to connect with groups in order to go into problem solving mode rather than arguing mode. And a big part of that is establishing rapport with the other person and making sure that you're in rapport before you do anything. And then second part of it is finding commonalities with that other person, common goals. So, they may be thinking we need more guns in order to be safe, and the other person may be thinking we got to get rid of guns to be more safe. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to just have an argument. Do we get more guns? And we have, or okay, we could be having a discussion on what are all the different things that we could be doing in order to be safe, because both people have this goal of being safe. So we could find some common ground.
I want to just put a little comment in there. It made me think of, I had an interaction recently, probably about 3-4 weeks ago, with somebody who was very conservative, coming on to some of the live streams that we were doing, and some of the Facebook posts where we were, posting some things maybe that were a little more on the progressive side. And he wanted to have these arguments with me. And I said, I'll be happy to have a conversation, but let's first see if we can find out, like, do you like Star Wars? Because I like Star Wars. Do you have kids? And what I was trying to do was trying to show that our humanity isn't limited to just the areas where we have conflict. Let's find some common ground where we can connect to each other as humans first. And then the conversation about the thing we disagree on vehemently can be more humanized and can perhaps be more constructive and productive rather than resorting to ad hominem and insulting attacks.
Perfect example. Perfect. Perfect. And it can happen at just, in less major discussions, like say, interactions like, with another person, a spouse, a friend, a student, when you criticize me and say, Mitch, you should have done this in the presentation. Okay. You may have the best intentions, but my limbic brain, my first reaction when you say that is, this person is saying I'm not good enough. And and that kicks in again in 1/50th of a second, and I may come up with my reaction before my my conscious brain come up with exactly the words to say, but that's my immediate reaction. So the question is, how do you step back from that and establish the connection, and some common ground before going into the fact that I screwed up this whole presentation, right?
Yeah. I think that's kind of that, that banking model. Like, you make these deposits with people,
right?
So that then I can make a withdrawal, and that it's my entire sort of perception of you isn't around the critique or the negative thing or the pulling apart an idea or a piece of you that I'm saying something negative or that could be perceived as negative.
Yep. Yeah. And so that's really, conceptually, it's this, OODA loops. And then specifically around when people oppose you or when people disagree with you, what are the ways to still come up on top? Now, there's situations where people oppose you, like, if you're playing tennis or, against another person, one of you is going to win and one of you is going to lose. Okay.
Right.
But if you want to do something in your class and the principal thinks that you should be doing something else in your class, you two have to work together, over the course of the year. So you don't want to get into a win-lose situation with somebody that you're going to be working with. You want to get into a common situation. So understanding the different ways of reaching rapport with people and finding common goals and being able to come back and win somebody over to your side rather than just trample over them is, it's an incredibly valuable skill, and it could be, and I think it'll be a very valuable skill for kids as well.
Yeah.
So we tried to go through that in 35, 40 minutes, but the whole thing, on all of these concepts, all of these tactics, all the reasons why, and lessons on how to, on some of the key points, lessons that you can do with the kids. It's a lot of material, and that's why this first course, it's 12 hours of seat time for the first course, and it's 12 hours of seat time for the second course. It's really taken me like 5.5 years to pull it together.
Yeah, there's so much there. And I encourage people to kind of go back, if they've just started tuning in, to go back and rewatch this from the beginning, because the piece in the beginning is such a critical part of this. The neuroscience behind this. Once you have that understanding, it's much easier to develop an awareness of these things, so that, like, my former instinct, maybe in 2016, is someone comes onto a Facebook post and attacks, and then I immediately attack back. If I can step back and have that conscious or unconscious competence, and I can say, okay, let's not just jump into a fight here. Let's humanize each other, and let's see where we have common ground, and then let's talk about this in a way that's constructive. And if we start to notice that we're going to reactive modes, we kind of going into that stress response, we hopefully can pull back, have the awareness to pull back and sort of recalibrate and come back to those touch points with things that we have in common.
Right. And you know, and that, you know, just when you're in an argument, you know, having this in mind and having those techniques in mind are really important.
Mm-hmm.
Before you start something, going through and consciously going through this is like, you know, like, you know, there was an interesting example of somebody, you know, somebody was really impressed with the mind part and wanted to introduce mindfulness into her class. Okay. Ideally, we would have gone through the whole course and she would have thought through here, like, okay, if I want to introduce mindfulness in my class, what are some of the things that could go wrong? And what are some of the skills that I should really have in order to do that? But she got really excited about it. The next day she introduced mindfulness into her class. A parent heard about it, called the principal. The principal came in and said, mindfulness is a religious exercise.
Right.
We don't do religion in our school. You can't do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you know, and it's too late then. Okay. Because no, mindfulness is not a religious exercise. There are religions who use meditation practices. Okay. But it's used in hospitals to lessen pain.
Right.
It's used, it's used to calm people down. It's used in therapies, you know, psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, they all use mindfulness as ways to calm the brain down. And if she had, you know, if we had, because it never dawned on me either, to be honest, okay, until it happened. But if we had gone through and we actually used that as an example in the class, you know, what are some of the negative reactions that could happen? And so what are some of the things that we could do in advance so that those negative things don't even happen?
Yeah. And I would say to that teacher, even though maybe that idea of you teaching mindfulness has been nixed, the most critical piece is your own practice, that the teacher doing his or her own practice and encouraging other faculty members to do the practice will change the culture of the classroom and the school, because it's about recognizing our own sort of overreaction to certain situations. And when we can model for students, hey, you know, I got really upset and I apologize. And here's how I'm calming myself back down. And here's how I can do that. When you model that, the students are going to pick up on it. So it doesn't even have to be a formal teaching. It's just a modeling of an attitude and a way of moving through the school day with peace and calmness that is contagious.
Exactly. And it's also interesting, you know, we're all, you know, watching this, you know, we're the adults. There's probably a good part of this that we've done at some point in our life and it's worked, but we haven't realized why it's worked.
Right.
Okay. This kind of proceduralizes it. So you say, oh, you know something? I remember I did this. It worked. Now I know why it worked. And now I can use it whenever the situation occurs.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I love this, Mitch. It's amazing work, and I really appreciate you sharing with us tonight.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll send you an email, and maybe if teachers from South Carolina want to sign up through SCEA, you know, that maybe be able to do that, you know, at no charge or something. But yeah,
please share that with me, and I'll check with our team and see if we can get that out to folks.
And Kay, if you're still watching, just contact me, and if you want to take it, I'll give you a code.
All right, you hang on. I'm going to close out, and it sounds like I guess Amanda says thank you for tuning in, Amanda. Thank you, Kay. Appreciate everybody tuning in tonight, and Mitch, thanks so much. If you'll hang out, I'll be back, and we'll debrief in just a minute. All right, everybody, that was Mitch Weisburgh, an incredible presentation. If you're just tuning in, please go back and watch from the beginning. Just amazing, very relevant work, and really for anybody, not just educators, but really this is relevant information that can really help us be better communicators and to help us navigate our lives with a little more peace and a little bit more of a constructive attitude about conflict. So great stuff. I want to remind everybody, we are the only teachers association who's made an endorsement in this race, and we encourage you to please vote Lisa Ellis for South Carolina Superintendent of Education. We know the alternative is just not good, and we'll just leave it at that. Please go to our website, lisaforsc.com. You can learn more about her campaign there, what she stands for, and she's on all the social platforms, all the major ones at Lisa for SC. Next week, I'm really excited because I live in Horry County, and next week we are going to have an Horry County tour. We're doing a blitz. We're going to have our folks from the SCEA are going to be out at so many schools throughout the week next week, starting on Tuesday. We're going to be, you can see the list of schools where we're going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So if you're in Horry County, look out for members of the SCEA to come in your building, and we'll be happy to talk with you about our movement, about how you can become a part of it, what all the benefits are. And we're just so excited to be doing this blitz next week in Horry County. And we want to invite everybody, all public school employees, to come out to Tidal Creek Brewing. That's a social that we're going to be doing Thursday starting at 5 o'clock. I think we're going to go to about 8 or 9 o'clock. You can come out and meet us there. If you don't get a chance to meet one of the SCEA representatives during the school day, and you want to come out and meet us, come on out and join us at Tidal Creek Brewing out in Market Common on Thursday at 5 o'clock. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Again, thanks to Mitch Weisburgh. Lots of wisdom, lots of great information that he shared with us tonight. You can check out more about the Center for Educator Wellness and Learning at cool.us. We also would love to connect with you. So just go to the scea.org/connect. And if you want to learn more about voting, you need to get registered soon. If you're not registered, please go do that. Make that a priority this week or next week. Go to the scea.org/votes. And last but not least, of course, at the bottom there, please, we'd love to have you in our movement. Join the scea.org or text the word join to 48744. Thanks again for tuning in tonight. We will see you next time. Thanks so much. And I hope you have a wonderful end to your week. Take care.